Imagine being a college student in a world where man-eating ghouls exist. You get attacked by one of these monsters and you're transformed into a half-ghoul. Later, you get beaten up and kidnapped for meeting a girl. Well, that's the life of our MC, Kaneki Ken. Kutaro introduces himself to his new colleagues, informing them that he's joining the Control Division starting from today. He expresses his anticipation for working with them. One of the workers comments that the new guys this year are quite serious. As he walks towards Eamon recognizes him as Arima, a special investigator. Arima tells Kotaro that his teacher has informed him about everything and extends his hand for a handshake, saying it's nice to meet him. Kutaro replies likewise. Arima informs him that he's placing Kutaro under the care of Mado-san. A colleague warns Kutaro about Mado-san, mentioning that he tends to get a little excited, so Kutaro should make sure not to get caught up in his flow. A man slowly walks into the office carrying some files. Arima turns to him, stating that Kotaro will be his partner from now on. Mado-san shakes hands with Eamon. He updates Eamon on some work, examining files of a ghoul responsible for 50 predatory kills in the last year. Eamon inquires whether they've narrowed down the suspects. Mado-san responds by handing him a file containing information about an elderly lady named Muramatsu Lai. He is taken aback by the information, prompting him to ask if they suspect someone of that age. Mado-san, tapping his finger on the desk, reveals he's convinced the woman is an applehead. Eamon, surprised, questions what makes him so sure. Mado-san replies that it's instinct, leaving Eamon wondering about Mado-san's mental state. They leave the office and find Muramatsu sitting on a bench. Mado greets the old lady, introducing Eamon as his new partner. He expresses gratitude for sending the doctor's certificate, mentioning it will determine whether she's the ghoul or not. Mado-san informs her that she has an RC count of 231, apologizing for casting suspicions on her as the numbers would be impossible for a ghoul. Once they walk away, Eamon questions why Mado did not let him know about having a doctor's certificate for Muramatsu Lai. Mado laughs, explaining it's easy to forge such documents and that it's part of his plan for her to reveal herself soon. He instructs Eamon to watch and take notes, then asks to see Eamon's Quinque, expressing curiosity about the type given to newbies these days. Eamon, frustrated, yells at Mado, emphasizing his commitment to serious investigations. Fed up with the older man, Eamon turns away, but then he sees Muramatsu Lai struggling to cross the road with her goods. He offers to help, wondering why someone would suspect her of being a ghoul. As he assists her, he notices blood from the trunk, and the lady's eyes change color. She shouts not to treat her like a helpless old lady, revealing a tail and oozing saliva as she advances towards the frightened Eamon. Eamon, thinking it's the end, sees the old lady's head suddenly fall to the ground. He acknowledges Eamon's inexperience and advises him to always remain an investigator. Eamon walks out of the building, meeting Shinohara-san, who asks him if he's back from the grid. He approaches Shinohara, inquiring about his presence in the 20th ward. Shinohara explains that he needed to see Eamon for something and notices the flowers in Eamon's hand. Eamon mentions he's going to visit Mado-san. Shinohara remarks that it's been 49 days, expressing disbelief that Mado is no longer with them. He suggests they talk another time, informing him that Mado-san was proud of him. Eamon reciprocates the sentiment and states that Mado-san was his pride. Oni walks out of his apartment and finds Hinami in the hallways, about to go find a house for a bird she found. Oni feels like things are back to normal for the little girl, considering how she was when she first came to stay with Toka Oni-chan. Hinami walks away with a man named Yomakun passing by Toka at the restaurant where they work. Toka argues with her colleague Nishiki. Eamon stands at Mado-san's tomb, regretting his late arrival the day Mado was killed, and promises to kill Rabbit himself. After work, Kaneki meets with a friend to gather information about the overwhelming rise. She informs him that she doesn't have any information on Rise, but suggests searching hard, starting from the 11th ward where she was before coming to their wards. On his way home that night, a boy bumps into him. Kaneki, noticing the pleasant scent, accepts the boy's apology, and the boy walks away. Later at a trash can, the boy reveals all the items he stole from Kaneki: library cards, money, and more. The next morning, Kaneki complains to his friend about the theft when a news reporter informs them about investigators allocated towards wards 11 and 20th. Kaneki's friend becomes animated discussing ghouls, making Kaneki nervous. His friend then raises a book, recommending it as a story about a gang of ghouls. Amon meets Shinohara, Hoji-san, and Amon's fan Takazawa Saito at the headquarters of Control Division 1. Saito introduces himself, eager to meet Amon. Shinohara informs Amon that he's being reassigned to the 11th Ward, where he'll be in charge of a special task force with Shinohara. At the restaurant, Kaneki and his friend discuss ghouls working together in Ward 11 to target investigators. A call interrupts them, asking about Toka's whereabouts. Kaneki mentions she's likely looking after a loser. He goes to check on her and finds Toka staring at a loser, recalling the traumatic scene of Mato-san lying in a pool of his own blood. Meanwhile, at high school, Kaneki's friends overhear people discussing Rise and catching her with their leader Banjo. In the 11th Ward, some ghouls have killed several investigators and plan to visit the 20th Ward. Yato mentions he still has a relative there, wondering if Banjo has found Rise yet. The Control receives a call from a person in a building amidst a ghoul attack. They hear a scream from the other end, followed by a voice declaring that he was the last one. Meanwhile, Tatara-san meets Ito on the roof, and together they start leaving. In the 11th Ward, Yomo and his partner find themselves surrounded by dead investigators lying in a pool of their own blood. Yomo tells his partner that their leader must be the One-Eyed King. At the coffee shop, Kaneki tells Toka that the place has been empty a lot lately. She responds while reading a magazine, explaining that there have been a lot of doves lately. The doorbell rings, indicating a customer. Banjo walks in, grabs Kaneki by his shirt, and asks where the manager is. Kaneki stammers, replying that he went out. Banjo asks where he went, and Toka interferes, scolding Banjo and insisting that if he has business at the coffee shop, he has to order a coffee. Banjo growls but complies, ordering a coffee and sitting at a table with Toka and Kaneki. Kaneki tells Banjo that if he has a message for the manager, he can relay it. Banjo sips his coffee and asks if any of them know Komikichi Rise, introducing himself as Banjo Kazuichi from the 11th Ward. He explains his acquaintance with Rise during her time there. Kaneki becomes nervous and Toka questions what makes Banjo think Rise is at their coffee shop. Banjo explains that when Rise left their ward, she mentioned something about the coffee shop. Banjo sniffs the air around them, then immediately grabs Kaneki by the top, asking why he smells like Rise and if he's her boyfriend. Kaneki denies any romantic involvement, which infuriates Banjo. He starts throwing punches, and as their friends try to intervene, bowing his head, Kaneki accidentally hits Banjo on the jaw, causing him to collapse. Meanwhile, in the control room, Amon arrives as a man addresses the investigators about the attack on the 11th Ward branch, stating they've got 0 survivors. In the coffee shop, Banjo wakes up and apologizes to Kaneki when he explains that he wasn't Rise's boyfriend. Kaneki expresses his disappointment and tells Banjo to relay a message to her if they ever meet again, to tell her to run. Kaneki accepts, and then he instructs Banjo to tell her to run if they ever cross paths again. Suddenly, the window breaks and Banjo tumbles to the floor from hard kicks, revealing Ayato, Toka's brother. Toka steps forward, asking him where he's been. Then a man steps in, asking Ayato if he's done yet, as they close the coffee shop, flipping the close sign off. Banjo gasps, asking what they're doing there. Meanwhile, at the control room, the man explains to his colleagues that the ghouls are calling themselves the Aogiri Tree. Suddenly, the door busts open, revealing the little boy who stole from Kaneki. He introduces himself as Shinohara's protege, Suzuya Juzo, apologizing for being late as he explains that he got lost on the way. In the coffee shop, Yamori and Nico attempt to kidnap Kaneki. Toka steps in to stop Yamori when Ayato intervenes, pushing his sister aside. Kaneki is beaten by Yamori, and when his eye patch falls to the ground, his eye turns red. Yamori seems impressed by the one-eyed, so he continues beating Kaneki until Nico stops him, suggesting they continue at home. Yamori orders Banjo to bag up the one-eyed kid. Yomo and his friend arrive at the coffee shop to find it covered in blood, with Toka sitting on the floor looking weak. As the police conference, Maru puts the 11th Ward under mandatory evacuation. When leaving, he spots Suzuya and decides to approach him, asking questions about whether he has been eating well since he's skinny. Shinohara intervenes, taking Suzuya away, stating that he must be tired and they'll talk later. Amon and Shinohara are in a room examining files on Suzuya, the only third-class investigator. Shinohara asks Amon about Jason, and Amon replies that he fought him once with Mato-san. Shinohara then stands up, instructing Amon to select a quinque from Mato's belongings, as it's specified in his will, given that Amon's quinque is broken. In the apartment, Yomo and his partner have called a meeting. Yoma informs Nishiki, Toka, and their friends that the issue concerns the 11th ward and what the Aogiri Tree is supposed to take. He also wants to discuss Kaneki's kidnapping, mentioning they won't go after him due to the CCG organization's statements in the news. Going after Kaneki could lead to their extermination. Toka stands up, declaring that she'll go and save Kaneki. Nishiki also stands up, stating that he owes Kaneki and will go for him. The old man informs them that he was already planning to rescue Kaneki, but wants them to know that he won't guarantee everyone's safety. He emphasizes that if they wish to save Kaneki, they must understand the risk to their lives. He and Yoma will do their best to protect them. But there's one thing, says the manager. The door opens, revealing a man with purple hair and a purple suit claiming to be Kaneki's best friend. Can't imagine my best friend facing danger at the hands of an uncouth bunch. No kidding, the purple-haired guy says. Nagachika is arguing that they shouldn't take Tsukiyama with them because he doesn't have the intentions of saving Kanai. Kano defends Tsukiyama by saying that their chances of rescuing Kanai will increase if they bring Tsukiyama along. Yoma assures Nagachika that Tsukiyama will not try anything under his watch because he will be watching him. Kanu tells everyone in the room that they'll use the CCG attack as cover for them to rescue Kanai since the CCG is planning to attack after evacuating every civilian. Yamori notices that Kanai is awake. He tells Kanai that Tarda had no use for him, so he claimed him for himself, and he adds that he couldn't be happier. Yamori says he's been dying to have Kanai as company before they met. He tells Kanai not to disappoint him as he wears his mask. Kanai, who's tied to a chair in chains at the moment, is struggling to free himself, but to no avail. Yamori tells Kanai that by using the RC inhibition fluid, it suppresses all Kagane activity in their body once it enters. And when that happens, his scalpel can slice through them at ease because it makes them vulnerable. Realizing that ghouls are immune to hypodermic needles, he injects the needle into Kanai's eye, and Kanai cries in agony. Special Investigator Murud is stressing the policemen about their plan to raid the 11th ward and wipe out the ghouls. He says the ward is occupied by about 500 ghouls. Amon is reminded of the moment he was handed a briefcase from a man saying that Mato wanted him to use it and also have it, with a man promising to treasure it. Yomori tortures Kanai, and Kanai screams in pain. Yamori asks him where he is on the counting, and Kanai says 559. Yamori tells Kanai that he will be back and when they regrow, and orders his servant to clean up the mess. The servant turns out to be Banjo, and Kanai recognizes him. They talk, and Banjo tells Kanai that he's a good guy and will find a way to get him out of there. He adds that Shu and Haru will be taking over for him, and he must trust them so that if anything happens, he should tell them. Nagachika and everyone else are in the room, seated, and the room is very silent as no one seems to be talking to anyone. Yoma walks in with Uda and asks if everyone is ready. Nagachika asks Uda about him joining the team, and he tells her that Kanai is his valued customer. Kano tells everyone seems to be here, and they set out. Shinori is looking into Yamori's old file before people started to call him Jason. He asked Amon what his thoughts were after going against him. Amon says Yamori is not like any ghoul he has ever met because he had a distinct vibe. Shinora says before Yamori became the Jason he is today, he got arrested by the CCG and detained at the Tokyo Ghoul internment center, and a conflicted investigator was assigned to him. He was severely tortured. Through that torture, Yamori created another personality within himself, and he became the savage he is today. The ghouls at the 11th ward spot the police, and they spread in teams to deal with him. Outside the ward, the police and snipers of the ghouls are shooting each other. Maru notices that his men are getting shot, and he goes out there and takes a gun and shoots a few ghouls. He hands back the rifle, telling his men to take out the rest of the snipers. Suzuya takes Maru's bike. Maru tries to stop him, but he takes off with the bike, saying he's borrowed it. He takes off with great speed and jumps with it. He lands in the room where the snipers are and takes out all the snipers by himself. Marud watches his bike blow to pieces, and he screams for all his men to enter the building. Shinora takes his men and is wiping out all the ghouls they come across. Amon opens his briefcase, and in it comes a big sword that he starts using to take down all the ghouls in his way. Shu and Haru are cleaning Kanai, and they tell him that Banjo sent them and they'll find a way to get them out of here. As they walk out, Yamori enters for another torture session. Amon crosses paths with the Bin brothers, and he worries about how he would be able to fight and win against them. Amon and the Bin brothers' fight intensifies, and it seems like they're defeating him because he's not standing a chance against them. He remembers that Mato had told him if he were to fight against two skilled fighters. Amon recalls that Mato told him there's nothing wrong with fighting dirty, and he opts to use that strategy. After focusing and splitting his weapon into two, he manages to take down the Bin brothers and eliminate them. Nagachika's running around looking for Kanai, and she looks in one direction, someone shoots sharp objects at her. But Nishio, using his body as a shield, falling down because he has objects that pierce through his body. Nagachika sees that the attacker is her brother, Ayato. Nagachika shows her rage against him, and Shinora meets up with Amon on a roof, and they talk with Maru through transmission. Shinora, Amon, and his men encounter the One-Eyed Owl. Maru tells Shinora to distinguish his men and select those who are ready to die with him to face the One-Eyed Owl. Kanai is sobbing in pain, feeling a hand touching his head. The hand stretches to his cheeks, and he assumes the person is his mother, but realizes it is Rise. Kanai seems to be in his mind because he sees himself in a very bright world filled with flowers. Rise tells Kanai that it has been a while and asks him what's wrong. She notices that he's all beaten up and finds it amusing. She tells him that the master has arrived, and at that moment, his mind takes him back to Yamari's room, and Yamari walks in. Yamari continues to torture Kanai and asks him how far he has counted. Kanai tells him 559. Yamari says he'll fill the bucket to the very brim with Kanai's fingers and toes. Kanai asks Rise about her being alive. She tells him that things like that don't matter now and asks him what kind of person his mother was. She shows him his mother in this imaginary world, and he also sees himself as a kid. He tells her that his mother used to help him with kanji and how to pronounce some words. As they see her going to work, they also see young Kanai going to a library. He tells her that it was Dad's library and he used to go there and read. She asks him if he didn't feel alone, and he tells her that it was because of that room that he loved literature. Back in the real world, Yamari comes again for Kanai's toes and fingers. As he cuts, he takes out a centipede and asks Kanai if he should put the dangerous centipede in his ear. Even though Kanai tries to plead with Yamari not to put the centipede in his ear, Yamari still puts it in, and Kanai cries out in great pain. Yamari asks Kanai if it is okay to eat him now, and Kanai agrees and says that Yamari should just kill him. He faces down with tears, but Rise holds his chin in his imaginary world again. Kanai and Rise see Kanai's mother fed up and dying because of overworking, as she was also giving allowances to her sister, who was always complaining about financial crisis. So Kanai's mom had to come through for her every time. He tells her that since she died, he had no other place to call home except when he's with his friend Hyde. Rise outlines that Kanai's mom died because she was too kind. Back to reality, Yamari has tied Shu and Haru, and they are in front of Kanai. Yamari asks Kanai to make a choice by choosing who should die. Kanai hesitates, but Yamari forces him and tells him that if he doesn't choose one, he'll kill both of them. Kanai offers himself to be killed as he can't make decisions on who should die. Yamari grabs Haru's neck and forces Kanai to choose, or else he'll break her neck. Shu tries to tell Kanai to choose him and save Haru, but still Kanai hesitates. Yamari breaks Haru's neck and says it's Kanai's fault that she's dead. He grabs Shu and executes him as well, blaming it on Kanai. Kanai tells himself that it's not his fault that all this is happening. Rise tells him that all this is happening because of him. She tells him that his decision to be kind and let people hurt him instead of hurting others is what makes him useless. She adds that he'll surely lose more people if he doesn't do something about it. She tells him to change because his mother died due to her kindness to her sister, and she overworked herself until her body failed, leading to her death. She makes him believe that if it weren't for his mom's sister, then his mother could be alive. He cries out, saying he wishes his mother had chosen him. He says he wished she hadn't chosen to help her sister but lived for his sake. Rise tells Kanai that there comes a time when one must forsake something to preserve the other. She shows him all the people he can lose if he doesn't forsake his kindness and fight off Yamari, showing Nagachika, Himura, and Hyde being killed by Yamari. This fuels him and he vows not to let Yamari get away. Rise asks him if he has the kind of strength to go against Yamari. Kanai agrees that he has that strength. She asks him if he's accepting her. He tells her that he just means that he can surpass her anytime, and he starts devouring her. He wakes up and says he's a ghoul, and his hair turns white. Back in Yamari's torture room, Yamari walks in and tells him that the time has come to an end and he should eat him. Kanai keeps his head down and his hair is still white. Yamari says he wants to take more from Kanai and asks Kanai to let him devour him. As he leans close to Kanai, Yamari senses and sees Rise from Kanai. This gives him a certain shock and he looks surprised. As Yamari is about to devour Kanai, Kanai breaks off his chains and jumps behind Yamari while grabbing his neck with the chains that were in his arms. Yamari pushes Kanai back, but Kanai bites Yamari and Yamari is pissed. They fight with everything they've got, and Yamari hits Kanai and pushes him to a wall. Kanai walks out of it and says it's his turn. He grows feathers from his back that are weapons, and he fights Yamari and defeats him. He starts stabbing and torturing Yamari, telling him to start counting from 1000 in reverse by sevens. Yamari starts counting because of the pain. Regardless of doing everything Kanai is commanding him, Yamari still gets eaten by Kanai. With that, this recap has come to an end, and you're a pretty interesting guy for sticking around. Don't forget to hit the bell icon as well as the subscribe button for more recaps like this. See you thirsty weebs later!